On episode 316 of the podcast, we are talking about science and the process of referrals. We're also going to be talking about the steps that you need to take to ensure that you have a business that is set up for referrals, since all of our businesses are run and based off of referrals. And then lastly, talk about a lot of other practical actions that you can take to get referrals without being awkward. What's up, friend? Hey, I am Ryan Coral from Studio Sherpas, and this is the Grow Your Video Business podcast, the one and only show, calm down, for corporate and commercial filmmakers, where we talk about the business of video production. Today's episode, it's all about referrals. We're talking like this is the gas to our engine. Does that make sense? I'm very excited to have my friend Stacey Brown Randall. She is the referral expert. Before we get into the episode, you guys, the 5-day Grow Your Video Business Challenge starts today. Ryan, how can the challenge be happening, but you're doing this intro for the episode? Okay, if you're listening to this episode when it releases on January 16th, today is day 1 of the 5-day Grow Your Video Business Challenge. If you're not already signed up, what are you doing? Stop what you're doing, because I'm about to ruin. Just kidding. Go to studiosherpas.com/challenge and get inside of the challenge. Day 1, we are talking about how to increase profits. Day 2, which is tomorrow, if you're listening to this on Monday, we're talking about how to get bigger sales. And I'm going to share my ninja tactics on how to make more money with your clients. Days 3 and 4, I'm dedicating to how to get more clients, getting more clients. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about getting new clients. And then on day 5, you're going to walk away with a solid plan for 2023 so that you can crush this year, make a massive impact in the world with your business, and get closer to that thing that you really want in life. And I want to help guide the way. I'm very excited. If you're brand new to this show, you're like, why is this guy doing a challenge? Who is this guy? I've been running my own video production business for 18 years, and we've had years where we've made over $1 million in revenue, and we have a team of filmmakers, and we're based in Metro Detroit, not like the fanciest, most wealthiest area in the world, but we still have a very successful video business, and I am very passionate about helping people in this industry build businesses and build lives where they can do this work, because I believe that this work matters, and that if you are called into it, I want to give you the business stuff that I've learned, the mistakes I've made, the things that I've done well over all of these years, so you can do this for a long, long time, right? Because it's really, really hard to build something that is sustainable. Anyway, go get into the challenge. You can access the videos. We're going to have the replays will be available all of this week. So if you're not able to show up live, don't worry about it, but go to studiosherpas.com/challenge and get registered. I look forward to seeing you in the challenge. We're giving away a lot of prizes and a lot of fun things. It's going to be really fun. This is the 3rd time we've done it, and it's always a really good time. I'll be showing up live and teaching and engaging and all of that stuff. So love to see you in the challenge. Let's jump into this amazing episode on referrals. Here we go. What's up, friends? Hey, welcome to this episode of the show. Today is my special friend. Her name is Stacey Brown Randall. Her good friends call her SBR, so I'm going to start calling her that. She is a successful author, podcast host, and entrepreneur, and she helps, or has helped, or is helping, will help even more. But she's helped thousands of business owners learn to generate referrals without asking. SBR, welcome to the show.
Ryan, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. And you have to promise throughout this entire interview you won't laugh the whole time.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be hard. I mean, my intro was pretty epic. Let's just start there. Should we talk about that?
I mean, we should turn it into a meme. It was so good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Stacey Brown Randall, I think I'm just going to call you that, like always, since you said like, don't do it.
That's fine.
So your specialty, your expertise is referrals. Where, like, at what point, when did you have the audacity to say like, I'm actually pretty good at this, or I've got like something figured out here? When did you realize that this was something that you could help other people like me sort of nail this?
Yeah, so I wish I could wake up and I was like, God was like, hey, Stacey, today, from this point forward, you'll be brilliant when it comes to referrals. That's not how it worked at all. It was the school of hard knocks, it's kind of how it always works. And so, but I would say it was probably my first year. So I had a business failure, had to go back to corporate America, came out of corporate America, starting my second business. And it was in the first year of that second business, trying to figure out how to make that business successful. So I didn't, pick up another membership badge in the business failure club like I had with my first business. Yeah. Right. One is definitely enough. And so trying to figure out how to make that second business successful, I just started trying a lot of things when it came to referrals, because I realized when I was reflecting on why business number one failed, and it failed for a lot of reasons, but when I was reflecting on why it failed, one of the things was like consistent client generation, consistent lead generation of people who could hire me. I was the classic entrepreneur who would get a job, right? Would get a client, would get a project, would put my head down because I started working on it. And then I would look up 4 months, 6 months later, and the project was over. And I'd be like, oh, snap. There's actually nobody else waiting in the wings to be my next project.
I have no experience with that. I don't know what you're talking about. I've maybe heard of this thing, feast or famine.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
We call it the feast or famine roller coaster. Yeah. It's a terrible ride.
It's the worst.
And here's the thing that I would say for business owners who are in their first year, and maybe even for most in their second year, it's actually pretty normal. Like, it's just how it works. But you have to figure out how to get off of it, because your business can't survive if you don't. And I was still on that roller coaster 4 years into my first business, which is what ultimately led it to fail before it hit the 5-year mark. Mm-hmm. And so when I was starting my second business and I was like, okay, so let's do things different this time around, I realized I hadn't gotten any referrals in my first business, even though I had some big name clients. And so it was like, okay, let's try to get referrals. And then I went to the all-knowing Google, like everybody does. And I was like, how do I get referrals? And it hit me with all this advice that I hated, that I would cringe at. I was like, oh, that's terrible. I don't want to compensate or give kickbacks. I don't want to ask people to always be referring me. I don't want to put in my email signature, the greatest compliment you can give me is a referral. I don't want to be networking all the time to be known and seen and remembered by all the people. Like, I have a family, I have a life, like all the things. And so I really hated all the advice that was out there. And so I was like, well, let's just throw some spaghetti on the wall and see what happens. And I knew it was working, but I didn't really know what was working throughout or living through that first year. But at the end of the first year with my second business, which is a productivity and coaching practice, I generated 112 referrals that I didn't ask for. And I didn't have to do any of those gimmicky networking all the time, compensation type tactics that most of us cringe at. And I was like, oh, I'm onto something. But it wasn't until the coaching clients that I had who said, hey, how are you growing so fast? And I was like, oh, I'm getting all these referrals. It's great. And they said, thank you so much for teaching us how to tame our inbox or to manage our calendars with your productivity coaching, but we'd rather learn your referral strategy. And I was like, oh, is there a strategy? I don't know. Okay. And there's nothing like being forced to teach it to people for you to be like, let me figure what I'm actually doing. So I kind of reverse engineered into my results, figured out the basic things I did consistently. Like, I always found myself doing this. I always found myself saying this, or I was trying this piece and it worked, or this piece didn't. And I kind of created a strategy, like some steps around it. And then my coaching clients kind of moved from productivity to referral type coaching clients. And then they started having success. And that's when I knew, okay, I'm going to set aside my productivity and business coaching and really just focus on this referral piece because it's different. I mean, I know I'm a contrarian to everybody in the industry about how people teach referrals. I do it completely different. And so, but it works. And that's all that matters. I mean, at the end of the day, you can be as different as you want, as long as what works. And, that's all that most folks are after. And you can feel good about doing it. And that's another thing for me. I mean, I know everybody can do anything for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
But I needed something for longevity. Right. And so this is a strategy that definitely works. And so that was almost 10 years ago now. So it's been a ride as we've kind of refined it and brought out different ways that we look at referrals and all the pieces behind it. But it really wasn't that first year. I was like, I'm on to something. And then I knew, because my first business had a scaling issue as well. Yeah. I knew when I figured out what my thing would be that I could scale, I knew I would see it and I would recognize it. And I totally did with the referrals.
That's amazing. So your first year of business in the second business, you said you got 112 referrals that you didn't ask for. How many clients did you have that year?
Oh, great question. I think capacity for me. Yeah. So I have those numbers. I kind of track this stuff like crazy. I just don't know if I remember it as well. I feel like there was probably 20% that weren't a fit, if I'm remembering correctly. And that probably boiled down throughout that first year, probably somewhere around 40 to 60 clients. But in the beginning, my coaching packages were 3 months. And I quickly learned that's crazy, because every 3 months you're looking for new clients if your client doesn't renew. And so that was probably more on the 60 side, if I had to guess. And then I got into 6-month packages. And by my second year, I was well into 1 year commitments, or second or third year. And so, so I'm assuming it's somewhere between 40 and 60. Some folks obviously were not a fit. Not everybody says yes, even when they're referred to you. And some of those were actually referrals, not just for coaching clients, but also for speaking engagements, which I do a lot of and continue to do as well.
So just overall value, if you can paint like kind of a rough range for those 112, so we can kind of put some numbers to that. Like what was the value of all of those people that were referred to you without having to ask for them?
Well, I remember I was probably 7 months into my first year when I surpassed my corporate salary and surpassed the 6-figure mark. And all my clients came from referrals in that first year, with the exception of people who just knew me. Like very early on, like my first or 2 months, it was like people who knew me, and I would do the 7 million cups of coffee meetings, so people would know that, oh, I'm doing this new thing now.
Right.
And so definitely some came just from my network, and then a lot of them started coming from referrals. But I remember, so definitely over 6 figures. And that would be combined coaching and speaking. Sure. Referrals total. I'm assuming it's close to that, if not at that. Not everybody came through a referral. If they hey, I remember coaching my attorney, like the attorney that we did to do our wills and trust. Yeah. He was like, wait, you're productivity coaching now? I totally need that. Mm-hmm. And I definitely picked up some clients that way as well. So for the people that you're kind of coaching now in this, like, what's the, like, let's just say for my business, right? I'm in charge of all new sales, and I've got relationships for the past 18 years with all of these, video clients. How much time, if I were to apply, you're like, man, Ryan, if you did, X, Y, and Z, you should expect to be spending like this much time per day or per week, not asking for referrals, but getting referrals? Yeah, so it really depends on where you're starting from. So let me answer that question depending on 2 different starting points. So 18 years of relationships, that doesn't actually mean 18 years of relationships that have been referring you. But let's just assume a lot of them have. So if you have people referring you now, and I typically tell folks to look at this, it's like half a dozen, right? It's like 5 to 6 folks per year that are referring you. We have what we would call those referring relationships. And if that's the case, once you learn the strategy that I want you to implement and let it kind of run in the background of your business. So I'm going to give these hours, right, that you would be putting into this over the course of a year after you have learned it and you are now in execution mode or implementation mode. So, sure. It doesn't take long to learn any of my strategies. They're a healthy dose of common sense, but definitely there's a lot of science packed in and baked into actually how referrals work. That's why the strategy works so well. So if you have referral sources, we're building out a strategy to get more referrals from your existing referral sources. I'm going to tell you in execution mode, once you've learned it and built it, once you start execution mode, you're probably looking at somewhere between 20 and 25 hours in a year. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think like my big fear is like, if, you're talking about, well, I got over 100 referrals. I'm like, man, to get over 100 referrals, I just feel like that's just like that seems like a full-time job in and of itself.
Yeah, and most people think that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so there's this thing about referrals that everyone's like, it's the best way to get clients,
Right.
because they're usually the easiest to close, the quickest to close. They already trust you.
Right.
They're less price sensitive because you come already seeming with value
Right.
because of someone referring you. But the other thing people kind of forget in talking about how amazing a referred prospect is for your business, they also forget that as a business owner, it saves you time, like a ton of time.
That's
and
really good.
There's a lot of people that I work with that are like, hey, I want to be 100% referral generation. And I was like, great, do it. Not every business needs that, right? Some businesses I work with, they're like, I just need 50% of my clients come through referrals, and then these other strategies work. Mm-hmm. Great. My business, I do believe most businesses should have a diversified way that you bring in clients. I think that makes sense. But, when I'm working with somebody, I'm like, you can do your SEO and your pay-to-click ads and your speaking engagements and your podcast interviews. You can do all those things, but I want your referral generation to be the biggest piece of your pie. But I do believe it's important to have that well-rounded pie. But usually people will say the referral piece is always going to take less time once you're at the point of just an execution. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like, I have two questions here. Let me start with one question that might be easier. You, a couple of weeks ago, you had shared, I think you had an Instagram story about a client you just landed or something like that, and I messaged you on it. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And you're just talking about like the big epiphany for this client. Share just a brief story on how you have. It doesn't have to be this client, because you're probably like, Ryan, I'm helping clients win all the time. I have no idea which one you're talking about, but share like a favorite story of how somebody who has taken your process for getting referrals, how it's helped them in their business.
Yeah, so I have to say I don't know which client
I figured.
You are.
My details are just what was that about? Yeah, okay.
I could pull it up on my phone really, really fast. I'm sure I could go back and find our messaging back and forth. Yeah, because the truth is when I'm working with clients, we have a couple of goals that we're after. And I think a lot of people who come to work with me, whether they're in my online program or my group coaching program, or we're doing like a VIP, like referrals in a day strategy, I think what people, when they pay attention to the metrics, there is this understanding and expectation that we're going to track the number of referrals received. And of course we are. That's how a lot of people define ROI, at least in the first year when they're making the investment to work with me, right? But the truth is, what we're actually paying attention to is not only just the number of referrals received, but then, because I like people to track this stuff consistently, is I want to know, what is your closing ratio of the referrals received? Some people I work with, they're like, you know what, Stacey, I actually am getting 30, 40, 50 referrals a year. I'm just closing 6 of them. And I'm like, okay, do we have a quality of the type of referrals you're getting? That's a strategy that I teach, is the quality. Are you actually not really great at having first conversations with a referred prospect, because it's not a pitch from like a cold prospect? Your sales strategy has to be different. So maybe you need help with that first meeting strategy. That's another strategy that we teach. And so we kind of look at all the dynamics that kind of go into having a well-rounded, referable business. And so the metrics really matter, but we are also looking at closing ratio, and then we're also looking at obviously revenue that comes out of those clients that you close, in addition to number of referrals received. So depending on industry, so I think it's an unfair to use like real estate agents as an example, but I'm going to anyways, and then I'll give you the other side of it.
Do it.
I can work with a real estate agent, and if they're usually generating a handful, I'm thinking of like Melissa specifically, like if she's generating a handful of referrals a year and she wants to grow that, and we get her to like 11 referrals in a quarter, more than she's ever gotten in a single quarter, and she's closing, I think, 7 of those, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, because the average commission for where she is on a house, her 3% that she's going to be taking home, can be anywhere from 10 to 50,000. So you do 7 of those, and it's a lot of money. It just depends, right? I'm not going to do the math because I can't do the math in my head.
Yeah, I don't do public math.
I do not do public math. It's terrible. But so working, with like a consultant, right? And it may be more for them. It's like it's $5,000 for every client that they can close by referral. But if we can double or triple or quadruple what they're bringing in every year, for most people, the expectation is unless, and I don't work with people where a new client is usually worth $1,000, like less than $1,000. Like I'm not helping somebody where you get a new client, you make a couple $100.
Right.
Usually the revenue is going to be 1,000 or plus. And so from that perspective, somebody who's like every new client's worth $2,500. Well, it could be that we brought an additional $20,000 or $30,000 from referrals that they didn't have the year prior. And now we can build on that. Yeah. So it just depends. But then I have some crazy stories, right? Like I have one client I worked with that deployed one of the strategies I have, which is when you want someone to refer you who's never referred you, there's a very specific way that you go about actually cultivating somebody into a referral source. And she worked with this person that she wanted to cultivate into a referral source. And she was like, I felt like it took forever. And it did. It took like 18 months. I always tell people, I don't know where your end of the rainbow is from a timeline, but I know it's there if you'll follow the process. 18 months, she wanted to get a referral from this one person. And she got it. And it was worth $620,000.
Oh.
$620,000, over $500,000 referral. And for one person, right? So, and I have somebody else who I was working with, and he wanted better quality deals, and he wanted a higher closing ratio. If he got those higher quality deals, and he should have a higher closing ratio, well, every deal he closes, it's like $300,000. I mean, it's like ridiculous. And he was like, you got me my closing ratio up to 1 in 3, where it was 1 in 9, because we got him better quality prospects coming through the door that were referred to him, and improved closing ratio with those folks. So we went from 1 in 9 to 1 in 3. Let's just say he made a ton of money, like lots and lots of money. And so, yeah, I mean, it really just depends on, I always tell folks, if you want to know what referrals will do for your business, here's the formula. What's the average amount that a client will spend with you? And then you look at what is your capacity for new clients, whether you have a growth trajectory or a stay stable trajectory. Both are fine in my world. And then looking at it from that perspective, then do it as, okay, so if you are receiving 12 referrals now and we got you 24 and you had a 50% closing ratio, you're going to, multiply that number by how much an average client makes you. And that's how much your referrals will ultimately be worth. It's actually one of the very first steps I do with all my clients. Like, I'm like, I want to know what the goal is. Yeah. Like, what are you trying to achieve? And then I'm going to track it against it. It's also, of course, how I get my testimonials and
right.
and case studies that I can talk about like with you. But the truth is like, I need this to be valuable, because the number one thing I'm tracking amongst every other thing I just told you, which is amazing, the number one thing I'm actually tracking is longevity. So if you are in my program and you have a great first year, that's awesome. But I really want to know in 3 years, you're still having a great referral year. And in 5 years, you're having a great referral year. And I have people who are building out their plans for the 7th, 8th, or 9th year. And they're like, yeah, but I'm consistently getting my referrals and I'm consistently hitting my numbers. That's what I care about, because what that does is gives you sustainability and consistency with one of your methods of bringing in clients, this one being referrals. It gives you sustainability and consistency, which is what my first business was completely lacking. And I know in that moment, when I can help you build a system and a strategy that has longevity to it, and you can do it year after year and have success with it, that I'm helping stabilize your business.
Yeah.
So you don't end up in the business failure club where I was.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that's so beautiful with any process. Like, I've got a program called the Video Business Academy, teaches a lot of foundational things to set up your business, to start reaching out to clients, to kind of niche down, be laser focused. And there's this upfront cost and investment of time and money to learn the things, apply the things, invest in the things. But then when you're doing the things and you do it over the course of 6 months or 12 or 2 years or 5, it just compounds, right? The things that you learn, you tweak, you get better. You just apply more to your style, or you realize wow, I used to sell like this, and now I can actually sell like this. I'm way more confident. I'm way more comfortable. And it just grows. Yes, exponentially. So I do like that. One thing that I rewind to the first couple of years of being in business. I didn't have any entrepreneur friends or family or anything. So I never really saw how to have a business. Or maybe I did have some people, but what I saw, I was ugh, I don't want to do that. So early on, I'm trying to figure out, okay, where do I network? Like, who do I hang out with? Like, how do I get more work? And what I saw very early on were these just like gross tactics that I thought I needed to do. Well, I'm like, well, that person, like, they're much older than me, and it seems like they have a successful business, even though the way they talk seems really awkward and makes me uncomfortable. And and it was all kind of like based around like referrals and people asking me to refer them, and I'd never worked with them, and I like barely know them, and I'm like, this is just weird. And recently, just a few weeks ago, we have a sort of a mutual friend that started a brand new business, and he sent me a random like Facebook message. I've never messaged with him before. Hey, I'm starting my business. Can you write a testimonial or a review for me? I'm just like, I want you to be successful, but like So when we're talking about referrals and stuff, like, help me understand how this can align. Can it align with my, I care deeply about people. I'm very empathetic. I don't want to come across like not natural. And there's a thing that I've seen over the years where I'm like, man, that referral stuff, it just seems a little, it's not my jam. So help me, please.
Isn't that the saddest thing, right? I mean, the number one way, I believe the easiest and what should be the number one way for people to grow their business has like a reputation of like, I don't know if I want to do the tactics to be able to generate clients that way.
Right.
Like, and so here's the thing, like, there are lots of tactics that are taught in the industry of referrals and by lots of other people about you've got to ask for them, you've got to compensate for them, you've got to be promotional and gimmicky, and you've got to network to be known and seen constantly by a ton of people, all of which are probably going against how you want to show up in the marketplace, what kind of time you want to spend on something, and then just ultimately your character,
right?
Yeah. Like what that looks like. Right. And what that feels like. And I think that's because for the longest time, referrals were taught based on, oh, you want them, so you need to go make them happen because they're about you. And what the science actually shows us is that referrals aren't about us. Like, it seems so counterintuitive. Like, what? I'm getting a new client. Of course, referrals are about me. No, they're not. Right. The fact that you're getting a new client is just a benefit. What that referral is about two things happening: desire and opportunity. It's your referral source who has an opportunity because they've come across somebody who needs help, and the help they're looking for happens to be what you can do. You're just the solution provider when it comes to the idea of referrals. So you've got a referral source who knows a prospect, and that prospect's like, I got a problem. And the referral source is like, I get to be the hero, and I'm going to connect you to Ryan. And you're going to think amazing things about me because I think amazing things about Ryan. And I'm going to transfer that trust to you when you go to have a conversation with Ryan. And so ultimately, at the heart of what's happening there is your referral source is putting their reputation on the line,
right,
to refer someone to you. But they had the opportunity, but they also had that coupled with desire. I'm guessing you're probably not the only person who does videos. There's lots of people.
At least 2 or 3 others, I think.
Yeah, or thousands, right? I mean, hundreds, thousands, whatever it is, right? There's lots of other people we could refer to, but why do we pick you? Why does your referral source pick you instead of picking anybody else? And that's a desire. And what most people will teach you is for desire and opportunity, you can control both. You cannot. You can only control desire. Only them picking you when they have an opportunity to refer to someone who needs a video, they're going to refer them to you, not your competitor or the person down the street. And most of those tactics that are taught today teach you, well, you control both. The opportunity you control by asking for them, and then the desire you control by asking for them, or whatever that old school strategy, insert paying for them or whatever. Like, they all fit. But the truth is that's not the science behind how they're happening, not the type of referrals you want. And so I always tell folks, like, having referrals come into your business is amazing. And to watch the companies that I've worked with that have had massive growth and massive changes and all good things happen comes because they were willing to respect their relationships and themselves of how they wanted to do business, but also willing to respect the science and the process. because sometimes this is going to take a little bit longer than just throwing up a Facebook ad and turning on your targeting and hoping you got it right and then seeing leads maybe come to the door. It doesn't work like that. These are people. These are humans on the other end of these relationships you have to maintain. And that's why when you ask somebody for a referral, you're like, the person you're asking is like, okay, how do I get out of this situation? I don't want to do this. And there's probably a handful of listeners in your audience that are like, I have no problem asking for referrals. What's wrong with it? They're just different. I like to refer to them as unicorns, right? They're just different and they don't have any problem asking. Most of us do. But the old school strategies say if we won't ask or do any of the other stuff we don't want to do, then we don't get any. And so then we're left with just hoping we get some because we do great work. And guess how's that all working for us? If we just do great work, which we all do, how's that working for us in terms of the number of referrals we're getting? Yes, we're getting some, but are you getting all you deserve? And to get all you deserve, you got to have a strategy.
Yeah, that's really good. And it can feel like, oh yeah, we get, and I would say like we get most of our work from referrals, but to think we don't have a good strategy. Like we do have a strategy. It's a pretty loose strategy. But to think that if we had a process, something that we were actively working on and nurturing, it's like, wow, like we do pretty well with just the referrals that we get without really working it. I can't even imagine if we did work it. So let's dive in here. Give us some tactics. Well, before we get into tactics, how I would say there's probably something about my business. My business has to be set up in a way that I should get referrals. So I don't know if that makes sense, but what's like the bare minimum requirement for somebody to say like before they start asking for referrals? Let's just.
Well, they better never ask, or they've missed the point of our conversation.
Yes, that's
the first thing. So yeah, it's funny. People are always like, okay, so what do we do to get referrals? Like, what does that look like? And I love your question because it's actually like the disclaimer I usually have to give before I dive into talking about like how my process works and what the strategies look like and what's, the philosophy and the science behind it. And your question is the exact disclaimer. You actually need to be referable. We teach this to my clients. I teach this as having a referable client experience. But what people don't realize is it's actually more than just doing great work. That's kind of like the bare minimum of getting hired is that you do great work, right? I'm going to expect that you actually know how to make my video amazing, right? That doesn't mean, and I'm probably, depending on how long you've been in the industry and what your rates are, right? I'm probably self-selecting to who I can afford, or all those things are coming into play, of course. But outside of that, to get to a point where a client would actually want to refer you, it's not just the work you produce. Because if it were just the work you produced, every single client you've ever had that you've done great work for would be referring you. And they're not. Unless you've only had like 2 clients and both of them have referred you. Right? I mean, the odds are not in your favor. So doing great work is definitely a necessary, it's needed, right? You have to be able to do great work, but you actually have to provide more than that in your client experience. And that referable client experience comes from not only the work you deliver, but the relationship you build while you're delivering that work. And there are definitely moments in your referable client experience where I would tell folks that you could be, what we call planting referral seeds to kind of see who it's going to jive with your clients and who would latch on right in their subconscious to like, oh yeah, referrals, without ever knowing that that's what you were doing because you're never direct about it, like in their face, give me a referral. So, but the referable client experience means you're doing great work and building a relationship, because all referrals come from relationships. It's the trust factor, and it can't be manufactured and it can't be artificially created. It has to build and it has to grow. So once you have that referable client experience, you definitely have the opportunity then to say, okay, now we've got this referable client experience. Or even if you don't, if you're getting some referrals, it means you're doing something right. And at that point, it is all about the strategy to either turn people into referral sources or take the people who are referring you now and just give them a better experience so that they have the opportunity to refer you more often. And that's really like, of the 3 foundational strategies I teach, that's the big piece. The big piece is where I always tell folks to start. If you have people referring you now, you need a strategy to get more referrals from them. If you don't have anybody referring you now or just a handful of people referring you, you need to know how to cultivate somebody into a referral source. But it all comes with the idea that you also have a referable client experience too. And that being the third foundational strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. That's really good. I mean, it's, I from the very beginning, the hope was, we do really these amazing videos, and then just like, okay, like let's wait for the people to see the videos, and then they'll call us, and it just doesn't work like that. So being investing in that relationship and caring about your clients and really trying to figure out like what are the problems that they have, and trying to figure out like how can you solve them, or is there anybody else you can introduce them to and help them on their journey, are things that you can, real practical things that you can do to say like, hey, I care about your success, and if we can do more stuff together, great. And hey, the greatest compliment you can give me. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Don't you dare.
But so let's just from a tactical perspective, like where could I start today? In I guess in more general, not me specifically, but if you have anything for me, please, I'll take some notes.
Yes, definitely. Right. For you and everybody else. So the first thing to do is to identify, okay, do I have referral sources, and who are those people? A lot of people come to me and they're like, what should I be doing to get more referrals, and what should I be saying? And where those are two extremely valuable questions, they're the wrong first questions. The first question is like, okay, who are your referral sources? Mm-hmm. And because the reality of it is your referral sources are humans, like on the other side, like that's a human, mm-hmm. and that's a relationship. And more than likely, you probably want to respect it and trust it, and protect it, And so it's the idea of first identifying who are your referral sources. I teach a really easy way to do this. It's like 3 quick steps. And that is, first, you need to just create a list of your clients. Now, would I tell you to go back 18 years? Of course not. That would be crazy. But I would tell you at a minimum, go back 1 year. But if that's letting you off the hook easy, actually, because the truth is what I really want you to do is go back 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. I want you to pull a list of 3 or 4 years of new clients who came on board. And when you're looking at those new clients, and again, if 3 or 4 years sounds overwhelming, just do 1 year. I can just do all of 2022. And then just look, okay, here are my clients. And then identify where they came from. Were they a repeat client? Because a repeat client is not a referral. A client does not refer themselves. They're just a repeat client, which is great. It means you do good work. They're coming back for more, but that's a separate source. So that would be a repeat client. Did they come through a Facebook ad? Did they come through a networking event you belong to? Did they come, like anything that they came through? And then of course, for those clients that were referred to you, I want you to capture the referral source's name. Oh, Ryan's a client and he was referred to me by Mike. Right. So I want you capturing the referral source's name and first and last name. And then, of course, once you've done that, you're like, okay, here's my list of clients. Here's my list of sources. Just go through and look at that list. I recommend Excel because of the sortability, but just go through that list and say, okay, now let me sort by referral source, and then just see who are the people who are referring these fabulous clients to me. Not that they're always fabulous, but that's where we start. If you have a couple of years of data, and you run that sorting, and you're like, okay, over the last 3 years, I have had 12 people referred to me, and they were referred to me by the same 8 people or 12 people, right? Or I've had 50 referred clients to me, and they came from these 32 referral sources. Then we've got something to work with. Then we're going to pay attention to the commonalities amongst those people. And then we're going to build out what we call referral plan of touch points. And the touch points is really just connection. It's outreach. But we're not sending a card every 30 days to our referral sources saying thank you, like that. You're doing that every 30 days, that gets creepy. And when I start to expect it, the point has been lost.
Right.
But we're also not taking these people to coffee or drinks after work every other month because, we're all lovely, but I don't think anybody has time to grab drinks with anybody 6 times a year, right? So there's a variety. And this is where the science kind of comes into play about when referrals are happening and then how you're maintaining those relationships, looking at kind of behavioral economics and the part of the psychology of trust and there's the science of social networks, and then there's behavioral economics. And those are kind of all the pieces we look at when we're creating and crafting the framework that we teach people of how to build their touch points. Like, what do they include? What does that look like? What's the cadence? What's the difference or the variety in what you're doing? And then of course, what's the language that you're saying, which is really our secret sauce, kind of we refer to as referral seeds. So you're going to maintain better relationships with your referral sources through these ongoing connections or outreaches or touch points with the specific language. Because here's ultimately what we're after. When we can impact how a referral source feels about us, and we want them to feel cared for, thanked, that we don't take their referrals for granted, that they mean something to us, that we are acknowledging that they're doing it, we don't overlook it, right? When we can impact how our referral source feels about us, we've then earned the opportunity to direct how they think about us. And that's where our language piece comes in. And so most people don't actually pay attention to the connection, to the human connection of how someone feels when they put their reputation on the line and then are never acknowledged or thanked for it. At the same way, when someone puts their reputation on the line and they're not only thanked for it, but then they're also continuously acknowledged in that relationship for it. And that happens year after year. Here's the thing. I'm not talking about doing 12 things a year. Nobody in their right mind should be doing 12 outreaches to their referral sources in a year, because then it loses the surprise and delight factor, which is a piece of the behavioral economics. What we're looking at is 5 to 7. Some people are 6 to 8. Most people are 5 to 7. You're going to fall around that 6 and 7 mark for most people of how you're going to do outreach. But it's not your newsletter that you send out every month. You don't get to count that, right? It's not anytime you're approaching any of your referral sources using sales language. Like, this is about relationship building and about the gratitude you feel. And here's the number one question people need to ask themselves. Do I believe that I should take care of the people who take care of my business? And if your answer to that is yes, then you probably need a plan in place to actually show them that gratitude throughout the year, but maybe like 5 times a year, and definitely not buying them gifts 5 times a year. That's creepy stalker mode, right? Definitely not going to have to hang out with them and get beers every single month or send them a card every single month. There's a variety to what we do. And it's all kind of baked into our framework. But the idea there is that these relationships deserve your time and attention. And that's what our referral plan provides, and also uses the right language. So they're paying attention to the what that they've done, the referral that they've given you, right? And how much you appreciate them.
Yeah, that's good. Even as you're talking, I'm just trying to think through like all of the clients that, I always, like, if I get referred by somebody, I'll always message them, whether that's via text or email. And usually, not always, these are people that I have a more like regular relationship with. But then I'm getting like heart palpitations as I think about like, man, like how many people have I missed or just kind of not overlooked, but didn't go as far as I should have in thanking them or recognizing them. So being in that position, like what's your recommendation for I'm gonna do this list, and I'm probably gonna shake my head and be like, Ryan, you're such a dummy. Like, how did you this person has referred so much work for you guys. What's the first thing that I can do with this group of, I don't know, 5 or 10 or 15 people that I might, hopefully it's not that many people.
Well, okay, so hopefully it is that many, just not that you've ignored. Right?
That's what I mean.
Your list of referral sources is huge, and you've been like, and I don't ignore them. Yeah. So one of the first things we always teach is that when you receive a referral, then the busy business owner's inclination is to feel good about themselves when they send a text message or a direct message over social media, right? Or they send an email. We need more than that. If you actually, because when you send an email or a direct message, right, it's all done in technology based, which means I forget about it sooner. Like, the truth is, whatever like story I posted on Instagram that you saw and you messaged me about, like, I didn't remember.
Yeah.
Right? I remembered in the moment. Thank you. I remember in the moment, but I couldn't recall it. But had you, not that you would have, this would have been weird, but I'm just using this as my example. But if you had written me a thank you note and mailed it and said, it really impacted me when you shared so-and-so's story about, I would have remembered it. Because more than likely I would have still had it somewhere around, right? Because we're talking about, the proximity of time. But the idea here is that, can you get an avalanche or an explosion of referrals by writing thank you notes after someone refers you? No. But you can get some consistent referrals that way. So it's definitely the first step that I would tell everybody is that when you receive a referral, I prefer within 24 to 48 hours, but good Lord, at least within a week or two,
Yeah.
you should take the time to get a handwritten thank you note in the mail to them, which means for some people, you will have to ask for their addresses if you don't have it, or have to, like Google stalk them and look it up. But what I want to do is have a plan behind that's taking care of these people in between receiving referrals, so that you have that top of mind awareness. Not trying to be keeping in touch. I want more than that. I want that top of mind awareness, because what you do has runway to be remembered. And so they go together, the thank you note and that. When I'm working with people, it's so funny that you said this. When I'm working with people and they pull together their list and they have that moment, they're like, oh, there's a lot of people on here I've totally ignored. Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Yeah. And then we're building out their plan. Everybody in my program does the same first touch point, because we've been doing this 10 years and we know this has the greatest impact. Yeah. And it's a specific card that they write. And sometimes we have to address the fact in that card that I've totally ignored you. Yep. And so that's usually where we start. Yeah. I always tell folks, like, something is better than nothing, but definitely, you just have to be willing to look at this group of people differently. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. The other thing, you brought this up, and this is something that I realize I struggle with. There's probably the thing that gets in my way from sending a card, because I know how powerful that is if I don't have their address, I don't want to ask for their address, because I feel like I'm ruining the surprise elements.
So you do nothing?
Well, so sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't, right? So help me overcome that thing.
Here's the thing. When someone emails you and says, hey, Ryan, can I get your address? I've got something to send you. How do you respond? If I send you an email.
Here's my address immediately.
Yes. So you're only prolonging the excitement.
But so the other part of that, though, is like, I'm like, well, it's just a card. Like, I don't want them to think that I'm sending them like some super nice gift that they really need to get excited about. Like, it's just a card. So I think that's the part where I struggle. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm overpromising, right? Because I'm just under-delivering by sending this card.
Let me put you out of your misery.
Please.
You're in overthink it land.
Yeah.
You need to come out of that land.
Like to do.
That land is no good. Oh. Most of the time when I'm dealing with the folks in my group coaching program, they'll ask questions like that.
Yeah.
They'll like, what? I was like, you are overthinking it. You are so close to it.
Right.
You're so close to it that you are forgetting that when you receive a card, you really appreciate it. Yeah. And they're like, oh, I do. Yeah. I'm like, yeah. So stop overthinking it, because we're so close to it. Mm-hmm. We are worried about how they're going to react or respond. Just send the card, because what a card says to me that an email, a direct message, or a text can't is that I'm worth your time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is a valuable message. And no, it does not need to include a gift card or any of the gifts or anything like that. Just send the card. Yeah,
that's awesome. Stacey, I wish we had 90 more minutes together. This has been super good. If people are interested, what's like a qualifier, pre-qualified, like if somebody's like, man, I'm interested more in what Stacey has to offer. I know you have podcasts, you've got some other resources. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, well, the website is the best home base. It's StaceyBrownRandall.com, and Stacey is spelled with an E. And it's going to help you figure out, based on where you are in your journey, what resources you need. Like, do you have less than a couple of referral sources? You got to start with a different strategy than if you have more than 5 or 6. But the book is always a great place to start. You can get it wherever books are available. It's generating business referrals. Generating business referrals without asking. I was thinking my podcast for a second. And then I was going to say the other thing is you can check out my podcast. We are changing the name to it in 2023. I don't know when this goes live, but we are changing the name to it in 2023. So right now it is called Roadmap to Grow Your Business. But if this is published after, I'm sure we can update that in the show notes page. But if you're a podcast listener, like if you're listening to Ryan, just start listening to me too. And you can start learning this stuff and understanding what it looks like, or you can read the book. Those are 2 great free or extremely inexpensive ways to kind of get started.
Did you say what the name of the new show is going to what?
No, it's a surprise.
Oh, it's a surprise. Okay. Darn, man. I thought we were going to. Jeez, teasing it.
I know.
This has been amazing. Stacey, thank you. How do you want to leave us today?
The number one thing I want you to remember is that you absolutely, if you do great work, you absolutely deserve referrals, but you are not owed them. And so you have to be willing to do some work to receive them.
I love it. So good. Thank you so much for your time, your expertise. Excited for the rebrand of the show and all that's coming to you in 2023.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thanks. All right, friend, if you want access to the links or the things that we talked about, if you want to get a direct link to Stacey's website and the stuff that she talked about, go to studiosherpas.com/316 to get the show notes. And I would love to know, what is your plan for referrals? Do you have a process? And are you practicing that process? I would love to hear more. This should be a New Year's resolution for you. This should be like one of the things that you say, you know what, this is the year that I come up with a regular process for asking for referrals without being awkward, but implementing it and doing it on the regular, having something that pings you to say like, oh yeah, this is the step in our process where we reach out to past clients or whatever that thing is. Also, I don't know if you noticed that, do you see this? I have a plant. Isn't that awesome? Before I started filming, I was like, what is that? And I was moving the light and stuff. I'm like, that's not the light. That's the little plant I have. I think it needs a stand or something. Okay, right now you literally should be getting off of this episode and going to the challenge. So one more time, studiosherpas.com/challenge. Get inside the 5-day Grow Your Video Business Challenge. I promise you there's gonna be a ton of very helpful, very actionable content, and you're doing it with a whole bunch of other people. And so there's just this like energy and this momentum, even though we're all virtual. People, you're gonna meet people and friendships are gonna blossom. It's gonna be amazing. So get in there. And then here's the other thing. Don't miss next week's episode. If you're not on my email list, make sure you just go sign up for the challenge right now so you can get on the email list and you'll get the biggest, most exciting thing I think I've probably ever announced or released is happening next week. So come back, and can't wait to see you. That's all I have for now. Have an amazing rest of your week. Hopefully you'll see you at the challenge. And again, here is to an incredibly amazing, fruitful, thriving 2023 for you and your video business. I'm Ryan Coral, signing out for now. See you later.